Welcome to Nasdaq Trade Talks. I'm Jill Malandrino, global markets reporter at Nasdaq. Joining us for this segment, we have Ryan McCormack, factor and core equity strategist over at Invesco for a weekly update in Nasdaq 100 performance. We'll also take a look at some key consumer expenditure data. Ryan, it's great to see you as always. Welcome back to Trade Talks. We know the first half for the Nasdaq 100 was quite remarkable. What did you see last week?
Yeah, hard to beat the best first half in history for at least QQQ. And last week we saw another good week for stocks. Although short week with yesterday's market close for the 4th of July, but we saw QQQ and QQQM up 1.77%. Yeah, the S&P 500 up 1.78%, and S&P 500 value up 1.72%. So basically neck and neck, right? Pretty widespread solid performance. And it was mainly on optimism on the back of some pretty strong economic data that was released last week, at least from a market's perspective.
And let's take a look at some of that expenditure data. We know, of course, this is highly influential with the Fed.
Yeah, exactly. And really that's what drove Friday's big move, right? And on Friday we saw QQQ up 1.5%, as markets reacted positively to the release of the May PCE data. So that's the Fed's preferred measure of inflation. And the headline readings on a year-over-year and a month-over-month basis were in line with economics forecasts. The core reading was a little bit lower than the forecast on a year-over-year basis, so a nice surprise. But all readings kind of showed this cooling price growth from the previous month. The headline growth number is the lowest that we've seen since May 2021, and the core year-over-year number is the lowest since November of 2021. And the chart there, shows the headline falling more dramatically off of a higher level, sitting at around 3.8%. The core has been stickier, but the line there continues to trend lower. And this release comes after the third estimate of Q1 GDP was raised to a 2% annualized rate. That was on Thursday. The higher number driven by consumer spending, which climbed to a 4.2% annualized rate. That's up from 3.8. And exports, which climbed to a 7.8% rate. That was up from 5.2%. That was kind of the best consumer spending number we've seen in almost 2 years. So the street, I think last week, it continued to see some level of progress against inflation and data that seemed to surprise to the upside. Now today, at about an hour and 5 minutes ago, we saw the release of the Fed minutes from the June meeting. Really, the takeaways there are, the vote to hit the pause button was unanimous in June, but there are some members that seem to have been in favor of a hike, namely due to inflation. Right, it's still a ways off from their 2% long target, and again, referencing back that super tight labor market. So, ultimately, it looks like all the Fed officials are in the camp of future rate hikes, and the projection for recession in the second half of the year remains, outside of Chairman Powell, who keeps referencing softer growth in the second half of the year. But ultimately, stocks are a little changed following the release. Nasdaq 100, as of about 10 minutes ago, was up 10 basis points.
All right, and finally, let's take a look at sectors. What contributed to the performance last week?
Yeah, we saw all sectors in the S&P 500 ending the week in positive territory. All sectors besides real estate ended up for the week in QQQ. The best performing sector in either QQQ or the S&P 500 was consumers discretionary in QQQ. That was up 4.08%. It was the largest contributor to relative performance against the S&P 500. The sector's performance was powered by Tesla. Shares jumped by nearly 12% for the week after the company announced Q2 vehicle production of nearly 480,000 vehicles and deliveries of 466,000, just over 466,000. Both figures were higher than analyst expectations, and deliveries were up 83% year over year. We also saw shares of electric vehicle maker Lucid Group rising by over 21% on the week, as the news was taken positively across the EV space, and Lucid was the best performing stock in the Nasdaq 100 for the period.
All right, Ryan, appreciate the insight as always. Thanks for joining us on Trade Talks. I'm Jill Malandrino, global markets reporter at Nasdaq.